Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional to save you time and point out trends that are happening among the lots of AI news every day. You can follow along. Articles are on gaiinsights.com/articles. Please tell us what you think, whether our ratings agree with what you're thinking, and like us everywhere on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and the like. Okay, with that, I have today the full house. I have John, I have Paul, I have Tim, Adam, and Ankash. So welcome, and let's proceed to the first article, please. Ankash. Ankash, we don't hear you. Ankash, you might be on mute.
He's off mute, but there's no sound.
Yeah. Well, why don't you just go ahead and introduce it?
So maybe Adam, I asked you to review this.
Yeah,
maybe go ahead.
I'm happy to kick things off and speak to this one. It's fairly deep. I wouldn't recommend it to an AI leader. Frankly, I kind of objected to, in some ways, how it was written at points. It's fairly technical, and although they seem to try and show that they're explaining it in really straightforward ways, I felt they were actually making it more confusing in many ways, so I didn't care for it. They make one fairly important point broadly and explore it at depth, and it's an important point, but they take their time getting there, and it's not quite so clear nor valuable, which is around as reinforcement learning, this post-training training effectively becomes more and more important. There are going to be unique challenges that come with it, and it's quite broad and quite deep around that idea. Could be important for someone who does want to go deeper into this so that they have a fairly comprehensive way to do that. But generally, I mean, it says like reinforcement learning is conceptually simple, and then it goes on to explain it in a way that actually confused me. And I actually know what it is already, so I just didn't quite care for it. It was probably optional for me, but I understand there's a lot of really good content in there, so I would be okay with important.
Okay, so the article's name is Scaling Reinforcement Learning, Environments, Reward Hacking, Agents, and Scaling Data. This comes from Semi-Analysis. They monitor developments in AI space, especially on the intersection of LLMs and hardware. So they usually accumulate lots of data, present it in somewhat unusual ways, provide their own insights, and they are usually deeper. So this particular paper is what, like 30 pages or something long. And Adam just gave us the opinion on that. So we're going optional important. What did you think, John?
I'll mute.
John?
I was more on the important side. I think that I like the stuff that these guys do at Semi-Analysis. They go pretty deep. They looked at the relationship between where the inference is happening, what we're going to see for primary demand for chips and so forth. So I don't know. I think I thought for somebody who really wanted to dive into it, it's about a half-hour read to really read it well, and so it's a commitment, but. I keep going back to the idea that, hey, our important articles are not, we don't think are required reading, if you will. They're really for to me, important is it a good use of time if you're interested in the area? And I think it's a good use of time if you're interested in the area. So I was going to give it an important.
Yeah, it's an informative article. They talk about China and what's happening in China, who is getting chips from where. It's you wouldn't necessarily need that knowledge immediately, but it's a broader broader information about the topic. Paul, what did you think? Going.
I said one thing. I think there's a really important point here, which they don't spend a lot of time on, which is they said, how do you set up rewards in non-verifiable domains? And that's something that's been bugging me forever, is because algorithms have a morality and an objective function built into them. And a lot of times I think people aren't very sophisticated in thinking about what that is and how hard that can be. What's the true outcome and how do you measure what's better or worse? That's a non-trivial problem. I mean, it certainly occupied philosophy for about 6 millennia, so it's, anyway, I think they raise some important points.
Okay. So between optional and important, Tim, what did you think?
There we go. I was between optional and important. I sort of view the way John views. If I enjoy reading it, well, there are probably people who would be interested, and I enjoyed reading it. It is there is some stuff that's they could have written this maybe in half the length to a certain extent. And for an AI leader, there's nothing in here that's probably going to change the next thing they do on their list. But it does have a lot of important points and good points about where the industry is going. They do write well about that kind of stuff. In particular, we have been talking for a while, I know I've been talking about it, that the ability to do reinforcement learning in particular without human involvement is the breakthrough. And we're doing it in some cases, still not in others. John, to your point, it's very difficult. Humans can say this is well written. It's pretty hard to define how to get an algorithm to say something is well written. But we've made a lot of progress in other areas. And if you can get to the point where you can start to really have these things do reinforcement learning without humans, that's where the race really takes off. Okay. So it's an important set of ideas and all the infrastructure around them. There are some good inductions from that point of view, including the part about synthetic data.
Okay. Good points, but not necessarily very useful immediately for a leader. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I'm on optional. I certainly very interesting article. These guys do fantastic work, but optional. In our first article, Luda, we've got a whole bunch still to go.
Thank you for letting me know. Yes, optional it is. Let's proceed. Ankash?
Okay, just put the next one up. I can cover it. It's about Pepsi.
Ankash, can you put the next one up? Sounds like we're not.
Like Ankash is having technical problems. Here we are.
Okay, so John, go ahead, introduce. And,
yeah, sure. So here we have, PepsiCo is using, this kind of a clickbait article moving, past pilot purgatory, and like a lot of large, I'm going to give this an optional. There's not any data in here really about what its impact is. It's the thing we've often heard. We're focusing on 4 or 5 big themes. Then we have a sandbox, for our organization. Yes, unstructured data is important. We're doing things like, building agents. And then they show some a little bit of data from a survey, but this is definitely I think more of a PR piece for the CIO at Pepsi and for the folks at Accenture. So I'd just say super optional.
Okay, super optional from John. Anybody disagree? Okay. So we're going optional. Optional it is. Let's proceed. It seems like it was edited heavily by communications and legal. So
yeah. I mean, the one thing I would note, Lou and John, they do talk about employee sandbox. We're certainly hearing that more and more. How can CIOs get some type of safe environment for citizen coding and bottoms up initiative? And but that's been a recurring theme.
Yeah. That's good point. Thank you, Paul. Okay, let's proceed to the next one.
You gotta love a future food with Chef Kelly on Pepsi. Even he's disappointed.
Yes. So the next one is AI metrics question, and it talks about metrics. It's coming from Benedict Evans, who has a newsletter and offers these pieces or wisdom or insights on particular topics. Tim, what did you think about this one?
I thought this did not add much to the conversation, so I'm going to give it an optional. It's somewhat interesting, but I didn't think it was all that well written or all that well thought through, and doesn't really come to any conclusion other than, "Gosh, we need metrics," and to which we say, you know, in the colorful way, "No, you know what, Sherlock." And
he also poses a question about, are LLMs going to be used directly, or are they going to be
embedded? Right. And the answer, of course, is yes. That, you know, Captain Obvious. So I'm being a little snarky, but I thought this was a long article which managed to say hardly anything.
Yeah, I happen to agree. Any disagreements, Adam?
My only disagreement is I don't think you were snarky enough, Tim.
Adam, agree?
Yeah, super. It's like obvious, not just
obvious, optional, triple optional. Okay,
yes.
Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one, Ankaj. This is a use case. Right. Oh, no, this is a Llama Index, introducing actually Llama Index spreadsheet agent. Quite innovative from Llama, working with spreadsheets and building semantic information about what's buried in spreadsheets. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot here. I didn't have much of a chance to look at the video beforehand, but you know, its ability to, you know, do semantics on top of it. So I'd really rather have somebody else rate it, because it's an important domain. I didn't have enough.
It's Adam, actually. I miss.
Yeah, that's thanks. I'll jump in. I wasn't that impressed. It basically got slightly better benchmarks than previous tools out there that can do code interpretation or can parse an Excel spreadsheet. And so it seems like it's been fine-tuned for that purpose, specifically of working within Excel. But Copilot for M365 works with Excel quite nicely and can spin up a Python environment. Code Interpreter with GPT, especially when you run it with O3, the reasoning model performs quite well with Excels. I see a use for conceptually what they're building in terms of a way to take, like, it's difficult to get data out of PDFs, PowerPoint, pictures, sort of a lot of that unstructured data. And in some ways, the point they're making is that even in an Excel, the data can be unstructured because of the way it's formatted in tables or pivot tables and other information. And they're finding a way to basically, as you said, extract that and create semantic maps around it so that then it can be used by other systems. I see a use for it at this point. It's basically, you're still uploading a single Excel spreadsheet to an interface. So it's not really ready for prime time or enterprise. And at that, it's going to be a pretty big ask to integrate it. So I was probably optional at this point, but definitely keep an eye on it, because it's out front in terms of the capabilities and the performance.
Yeah, I think this is a watch this space optional. I think spreadsheets contain so much valuable information, and we've gotten really good at, you know, monkeys on keyboards, I would call it, type of manipulation. So we know how to create pivot tables and do this and that or the other thing, because they can be done fairly mechanically based on the general patterns. This is attempting, we don't know if it'll work, and that's, as Adam said, it doesn't look that great yet, to actually get the semantics out of the spreadsheet. So think of it as you're given a database but no schema, which is what most spreadsheets are. They're really a database, and they have a lot of schema and even dynamic schema because they can compute. There's a lot of important information encoded in that semantics if you can tease it out. So that will be a real breakthrough. When somebody says, I can tell you why this spreadsheet works and how it works and what it's after, that's a big deal to me. especially in
but
corporate
see,
environments.
for that reason, for what you just said, and the capability of tease out the semantics into representation automatically and then use it is a very interesting development here, and it's open. So it's a platform in essence. It's one spreadsheet. Yeah, it's the beginning, but it's an open source, and you can actually use it right now and start working with it. So I am actually was on the important side because of what you said. Paul, what do you think?
You got my vote, Luda.
Okay.
Yeah. Hearing the description, because I didn't have a chance to review it, I would go important.
Yeah.
Because
Thank you. I really do think this is an important indication where the stuff is going. So important it is. Let's proceed. Okay. So the next one is a case from AWS that talks about how Kepler democratized AI access and enhanced client services with Amazon Q Business. Kepler is a marketing agency with about 500 people, and they built something that didn't work as well, and then they shifted to Amazon Q Business with much better results. John, what did you think about this?
Yeah, I was between optional and important, leaning more toward optional. They do have some good stuff in here about when they. It does feel pretty Amazon-y, commercial wise, right? But their ability to ensure security. I mean, Kepler works with Fortune 500 companies. They've got very specific data requirements. And they work under the ISO 27001, data information, privacy standards. So, it's good upgrade. They do have data in here about how it's, saves their people some time, about 2.7 hours per week. It's quite a precise number, and their satisfaction rates are almost 90%. So that's all good. So I was, but it's kind of a thin article, if you will. It does have more specifics technically and in terms of user experience than most. So I'd be okay with an important on this one.
Okay, Tim, what did you think?
Yeah, it's tricky because it is really a commercial, and I mean it's in theory written by the customer, but it's like why Amazon is great. But as John said, they did put some real statistics in there. It's a real company. And so I would give it an important just because of that. They got about a 5%. I judged it as about maybe a 5% productivity improvement across an initial set of employees. So they haven't rolled it out to everybody yet. So there's some scaling yet to do. And again, it reads a little bit like a commercial and reinforces what we've been saying forever, which is people stick with what they've got because they were already on AWS. So when their solution wasn't working, the simple thing to do was use AWS capabilities. But it's a good demonstration of using them, and they did put some statistics in there.
Yeah. Adam, what did you think?
I was leaning more towards optional, but I would be all right with important. It does have enough metrics in terms of outcomes to support the use case.
Yeah, I was on the important side for a slightly different reason. They describe what they built initially. And this is in the era when there was no contents continuity, and the prompt windows context was small. So you had to retype stuff. There was no access to documents. And so again, context was lacking. So they had to rebuild it. And I think a lot of companies are in that space. They built initial custom GPTs, and they need to rethink what needs to get done using everything that has transpired over the last 6 months even. So I think it's like elevate your prior developments, I think. So that's why important. Paul, what did you think?
Sure, I can support important. I mean, this is a secure employee chatbot. They've been late to this entrant. They're in there. I would really like to see why Kepler didn't go with OpenAI ChatGPT, which is by far, in my opinion, a superior productivity tool for knowledge workers here. So, I think good for Q business, but unless you're an Amazon shop and don't want Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, I don't see a lot of value in this.
Okay. All right. Let's rate it important and proceed. Okay. The next one, Ankash, please show. Okay. So this comes from Cameron Wolf, who explains he's a PhD student, and he explains various difficult concepts in a very nice way. So this one is kind of a tutorial about and called AI agents from first principles. So he takes it from very beginnings, essentially what's an LLM and how you talk to it, prompts and the like, and takes it to reinforcement learning and how that works and the like. Tim, what did you think about this one?
I think it's okay, but I would probably give it an optional. It's long, and I think could have been done, and again, could have used AI to say make this 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs, because there is a lot of depth to it if you're interested in the references. If you really want to learn right from scratch, then this isn't a bad place. Other than that, it doesn't really add anything to the conversation. There's a lot of articles like this. It's okay. As I said, it's not badly written, but it's turgid, a little bit turgid for me, which means bloated.
Okay, got it. All right.
So I would call
Adam,
it optional.
what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a pass as well. This one more so than the one before about the reinforcement learning, I felt did a fairly good job of explaining things clearly. If someone was looking for something that was going to be a good guide to get all the way to an understanding of agents from first principles, it's pretty good. But I think Tim's assessment is fair. I would probably lean towards important, just as, in case someone wants to take the time to pick it up and go through it.
Yes, Paul.
The definition of agents now is so broad. We're going through the product briefings with vendors, and Adam, every GPT is now an agent, and I don't know what isn't an agent now. So if there's an LLM involved, it's an agent.
Yeah, and at the end, he's struggling. He gives the where agents are used, several categories, talks about differences in them, but he struggles to define what an agent is. So utility from that perspective, I don't think is there. How about John? We're going optional.
Yeah, I'd make the case for important. I think that, having tried to write some of the things like this, it's easy. I'm reminded of the quote from Teddy Roosevelt about the man in the arena. It's easy from the cheap seats to say you could have made it easier. I think it's a hard problem to lay out, and I think this is well written. I don't see anything I disagree with. I don't think it's giving bad information. I mean it's well written. It's long for sure, but when we find something like this, so the first one we had on reinforcement learning that does a decent job of laying out the domain, good examples, actually, gets beyond the jargon into here's what's actually going on, or here's a definition of it, or here's an example, and both of those articles do it. I rate those as important. I think of them as basically, primers for important areas, and agents and reinforcement learning to me are both primers for enforcement areas, but I get a feeling I'm going to be outvoted.
Yeah, I could go out important on both, John, for that reason. We're not telling anyone that this is a must.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was sort of on the fence, so I won't argue against it. I just think there are a lot of articles like this, and this one wasn't that much better.
Okay, but it's a primer. So if you want, in not lingo terms, understand what's happening, he does do a good job on that. Important. Let's proceed, Ankash, to the last one. and Ankash can speak. So Adam, I'll ask you to review. So it's Apple has their Bow Out conference, and there are lots of announcements in there, but and it's all across the various devices. There is one that they are opening Apple Intelligence models on the for developers. So you can on device use their model and build with it. That's one of the announcements. What did you think about all of these, Adam?
I saw a post today that I think summarized it pretty well, which is if you ask Siri if Apple's even having a worldwide developer conference, she doesn't know. Like it is. I mean, it's sad. It's borderline.
That's awesome.
Pathetic how poorly integrated Apple Intelligence has artificial intelligence in it. These are great, and these are things for developers. And in the future, we'll probably see some apps that take advantage of some of these cool features. I think this is like the big headline here is that they've done absolutely nothing, and this was the opportunity to do something, and they did nothing, pretty much, in terms of trying to keep up. Nonetheless, not get further behind. It's just like the news might be that there is no news really out of WWDC.
It is pretty bad. Going on very big optional here. Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, super optional. I love the joke. I think if we go back, I think we were doing year predictions back in January, and I think one of the ones we had was, or someone had, was that Apple would really make a big dent and move the industry.
Oh, they're at the edge. They're vertically integrated. They've got AI on their phones now. Like
correct. And this is the exact opposite. I mean, it really is. I think it shows example of leadership counts, and I think it shows an example of, founders like Bezos and Zuckerberg really putting their hands on the steering wheel of some of these mega companies here. And kudos to Microsoft, who's really executing this worldwide. But Tim Cook is absolutely asleep at the wheel, and full stop, and everyone knows it.
Oops. Okay. So
I think the sleeper thing here is the release of the model to developers.
Yeah.
So, whether it's Apple looking in the mirror and saying, well, we screwed up, so maybe we can get some help. It doesn't really matter why they did it. It'll be interesting to see what happens now, because there are a lot of Apple devices out there.
And a lot of developers, and there are many, many apps out there. So they will take note and do something with it. Yes, John.
I think there's that. I think the other thing is that I think this on-device privacy thing is a big deal. And, and I think that
that was the other thing, right?
Yeah. The other thing is that I agree with you. They're way behind where I would think they would be. And I agree with you about the founder issue, Paul. But they're integrating this stuff, and they've done a terrible job. I just, bought a new Apple, phone and stuff to try it out. I got the 16. But I think that the way that they're layering it into applications like, reminders and email and, pictures and so forth, actually, I think it's going to, slowly take off. So I would give it more an important, not essential.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting, we had a really good learning lab last night talking about the SEO bloodbath and how the movement over here. I mean, Apple phones are the highest income in general. I mean, it is a really, really high dollar owner on the other side of that. So you could think of a Rufus type shopping experience over there that's hyper secure, that could be very compelling for, high dollar shoppers and commerce. And that still hasn't been executed on.
Yeah, it's all the opportunity is there, but the execution is not. Okay, so let's rate it as optional. Ankash, if you have the board for us, and Paul, if you want to talk about any announcements, now is the time.
Yeah, we had a 75 or 80 last night on Learning Lab. A really good discussion on the impact, this SEO bloodbath, this move from search engines to answer engines is very real now, absolutely showing up in log files and Google Analytics. Rosemary talked about some really good data that's showing click-through rates are going down at Google for a whole bunch of reasons as they try to keep people in there. So if that's an important part of your business, go to our channel, GAI Insights on YouTube, and you can watch the replay now.
Yeah, and Ashish is saying there's so much opportunity, but the only thing it can do is play music. It's back on Apple. This is pretty bad. Okay, so for today, we have 3 importance and the rest is optional. So thank you all listeners for participating. Thank you all analysts for sharing your opinions. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow.